Please sit down. Well, welcome again to the 9th Summit of the Americas. A lot of hard work has gone into this summit and a lot of strong and constructive diplomacy so far, I believe. We brought together diverse voices and stakeholders and development and ambition agenda for action to address the issues that matter most to the future of our region. And they're not all the same concerns in one sense, and in another sense, they're all incredibly intertwined. I'm incredibly honored to be hosting all of you here in Los Angeles. My administration and the proposals that we're eager to discuss with you, we want to begin to talk about today. Proposals that I think are a far cry from what we saw from a previous American administration. But equally important, we, the Vice President and I, we want to listen. Hear all of you, what you think we should be doing. In the next few days, we have an opportunity to find ways we can do better for all of our people by working together. And I emphasize together, together. That's what our people expect of us. And it's our duty to show them the power of democracies to deliver when democracies work together. The United States stands ready to work in partnership with all of you, governments, institutions, civil societies, young leaders of tomorrow. And I invite my fellow heads of state and heads of government of the Americas to join me in adopting concrete hemispheric commitments that are going to advance our efforts to build a more sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. With our action plan on health and resilience, we're going to help our region recover from COVID-19 while strengthening health systems and improving our ability to respond to future health emergencies by investing in health workers. The new America's Health Corps will train 500,000 public health and medical professionals in the region over the next 5 years. The United States is going to fund this together with the Pan American Health Organization. So when the next pandemic hits, which it will, we'll be ready and trained with healthcare workers to administer the vaccines and the needed care, which we don't have now. And it won't cost your countries anything. Through our efforts to strengthen clean energy economy in the Americas, we're committing to not just to energy transition, but to make communities that have been historically marginalized are able to share equally in the gains. With equitable access to both good-paying jobs, we'll create and the affordable clean energy that will be made available. I'm going to continue to work, just as I did when I was Vice President with Barack Obama, to promote trade and investment in clean energy, including using the United States International Development Finance Corporation to help countries that need assistance to assess financing and to help the region reach ambitious renewable energy goals by 2030. By adopting the Inter-American Action Plan on Democratic Governance, we're going to commit our nations to making real the promise of the Inter-American Democratic Charter. And sometimes we forget what it says. It says inclusive democratic governance, transparency and accountability, protections for human rights of all people, respect for the rule of law. And on all these issues and more, the United States is making a critical commitment to demonstrate our enduring investment in our shared future and to address our shared concerns, because they are shared. Last night, I announced the America's Partnership Economic Prosperity Plan to drive equitable economic recovery and invest in working families throughout the hemisphere. Today, I rolled out a new partnership and collaboration with the Caribbean countries to address climate change. I just spent a little time with the Caribbean leaders. We have to go back and do a lot more, hear directly about their concerns, and discuss all the ways we can move together, as they pointed out to me just an hour ago, with a sense of urgency, not years, not months, but soon, soon. We're making good on our commitment to vaccinate the Americas against COVID-19, giving more than 65 million doses that we've already donated to the region. Over the next few days, we're also announcing more than $645 million in a new life-saving assistance to address food insecurity in the region and increase the ability to respond to disasters as well as historic refugee and migration flows. Each one of our countries have been impacted by unprecedented migration. And I believe it's our shared responsibility to meet this challenge. And I emphasize shared. Tomorrow, a number of us will join in announcing the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection. This will bring our nations together around a transformative new approach to invest in the region and solutions that embrace stability, to increase opportunities for safe and orderly migration, to crack down on criminals and human traffickers who prey on desperate people, and coordinate specific concrete actions to secure our borders and resolve the shared challenges. And tomorrow, I'll be speaking more to this and laying out our commitments. The bottom line is this: the Western Hemisphere is home for all of us. Back in 2013, when I was Vice President to Barack Obama, he asked me to lead our engagement with the region. And I said we should be talking about the hemisphere. And I made a speech back then saying the hemisphere, we should look at it as a middle-class, secure, democratic hemisphere from Canada to Chile and everywhere in between. Over the past decade, our region has changed. Challenges we faced have changed. And so our policies and our solutions have to change as well. But I want to be very clear. My fundamental view and my approach to the hemisphere has not changed. I still believe what I said then. I hope that you do too. There is no reason why the Western Hemisphere can't be the most forward-looking, most democratic, most prosperous, most peaceful, secure region in the world. We have unlimited potential. We have enormous resources and democratic spirit that stands for freedom and opportunity for everybody. And no matter what else is happening in the world, the Americas will always be the priority for the United States of America. So thank you again for being part of this summit. We have a busy few days and incredible opportunities ahead of us. So let's get to work. And I'm now supposed to hush up and sit down, and we're going to have a conversation. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. President. Good afternoon. The chair recognizes Ms. Cecilia Vilches Gonzalez, Youth Participation Component Coordinator of the Young Americas Forum.
Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Excellencies, heads of state and government. My name is Cecilia Vilches. I'm Mexican. I'm the youngest of 13 children. And today is a great honor for me to represent youth in the Americas.
This is about youth. El Foro de Jóvenes
The Youth Forum of the Americas is the forum that allows us as young people to reach these spaces, is an ongoing process of engagement with youth of OAS member states, monitoring actions and defining priorities that are relevant to young people. It is a great honor for me to represent young people here and to bring the voices of over 27,000 young people from each of the OAS member states. Considering the last Summit of the Americas and the commitments made by young people and understanding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, this led to a reshuffling of priorities in society. Since YABT, the organization that incorporates the Forum of the Americas, this led to the 6th Youth Forum as an official forum for the 9th Summit of the Americas. There has been a combination of conversations on follow-up and establishing priorities through a process of consultation. We believe that an ecosystem of development for youth that helps strengthen democratic governance and putting forward an inter-American agenda. That is why, through the 6th Forum, we promoted dialogue, participation, informed recommendations from experts, and a call to innovative entrepreneurship for young people around several major themes: climate change, working with young people, the fight against corruption, connectivity, and digital transformation, as well as COVID-19. These main areas show the evolution of the priorities of young people that we bring to the table. The current engagement process began just after the last summit in Lima, Peru, held in 2018. Since then, contributions, proposals, opinions, and recommendations, actions have been put together from over 27,000 young people all over the continent, throughout the entire continent, as a response to the commitments made at the for the ninth summit. The Youth Forum of the Americas has found an opportunity to provide tools to young people who, just as I do, aspire to continue growing professionally. We want to change our lives, not only for ourselves, but for other people who need us in order to find their way. The result of this was the creation of the 5 thematic areas that I've mentioned. Throughout this process from the Youth Forum of the Americas, we have brought a statement of commitment and a plan of action created by young people based on our opinions and our recommendations. This is follow-up of a strong consultation process directed at youth in the entire continent, with the support of over 400 young people's networks who work daily through dialogue, consultation, different actions, and mechanisms. Our goal is to make sure that the voices of young people throughout the continent are heard in different contexts, in different countries, and we want to make sure that there's ethnic, geographic, and gender representation. In order to achieve inclusive representative participation, we've worked with local, international organizations and governance. There have been over 160 dialogues from 2019 to date. Over 14,000 young people have been involved through this specific channel, and currently we continue to support young people and have created fora for local and regional dialogue. On May 16th, we held a hemispheric dialogue. 45 networks of young people throughout the continent created a statement of commitment and an action plan where we presented the opinions of each representative and the experience and actions that we have experienced as young people. We also are promoting the program for talent and skills in the Americas in the area of information technology, involving over 14,000 young people from OAS member states. Likewise, we are grateful for the interest shown by the government of Colombia, Panama, Peru, the United States, and the OAS. Specifically the Secretary General and the Assistant Secretary General, who have been a part of this process from the beginning. They have shown a commitment, support, and they've worked closely with the young people from the 6th Forum of the Americas. Now, results to date from the 6th Forum specifically are in the area of the C's. First, climate change, responding to a political commitment for a green future and a clean energy. We call upon governments and businesses to incentivize more sustainable transportation models and creating projects for cities that allow for strengthening mobility for pedestrians, and especially protecting the environment, for the environment and the health of our populations. We want to strengthen the water supply of our cities via reforestation. We ask governments to incentivize research and development and use new energies in the region in order to lead to investment and the use of these technologies in a more inclusive fashion, investing in mechanisms for implementing renewable energies in industries and implementation mechanisms for small and medium-sized enterprises. As young people, we commit to work on initiatives that allow access from all sectors to these technologies, including access to biofuels. Now, within the second area, which we have been discussing throughout this process of consultation, the fight against corruption is a response to the political commitment of democratic governance for the 9th Summit. We understand that multilateralism is a tool for cooperation. Political, economic partnerships can be made with the hemisphere, and based on this, then, as young people, we suggest creating policies for young people that allow us to talk about issues that are of interest of us, such as immigration, trade, and innovation. One of our greatest challenges is making sure we can guarantee survival in several areas, such as education. We must provide alternatives and safety and access to basic rights for young people and for all of society. Now, within the third C, connectivity and digital transformation, we urge governments to ensure that our region has access to high-level technology in every area of society. This includes digital education for indigenous peoples and vulnerable populations. We must promote, establish, and regulate labor policies, and we must strengthen human capital. The C that represents COVID-19, the political commitment of health and resilience. We must show the impact of the pandemic when it comes to gender, school dropout rates, a lack of access to health services, the cultural burden of domestic work and caretaking. These have meant that women are at greater risk for violence, women, young women, and girls. Therefore, we think we must reinforce social protection mechanisms for all people. In the area of human mobility, we need work, employment, insertion programs, and we must make the most of the skills of our entire population. As a response to the impact of the pandemic in more vulnerable populations, we wish to promote economic models that are inclusive with a focus on collaboration and with a gender perspective. These are some of the contributions we've identified as young people, and we continue to search for ways to implement things and to work together with each one of the organizations present here today in order to make this possible. We will also present the entire declaration to the Secretariat of the Summit of the Americas so that it may be circulated to all of you so that you may use it as a foundation for developing public policies and to establish priorities and mandates that we have as a region. We thank you very much for your support, and we thank you for this space as young people. We believe that as young people, we must be partners for prosperity. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes the Honorable John Bresenio, Prime Minister of Belize.
His Excellency Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, and Madam Vice President Harris, heads of state and government, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen. We have gathered in the City of Angels, the American city that most reflects the best and worst of the Americas. A city that is home to millions of citizens from every country in the Western Hemisphere. a melting pot, a melange, un crisol de culturas, a city in which too many have too much and too many have too little, a mirror of the Americas in 2022. Los Angeles, a beautiful city endowed with abundant riches, where ambition, coupled with hard work, makes real the promise of the American dream, that a decent living is possible for the majority. My friends, we have come to this blessed place to refresh our collective will to do good and to once again recommit ourselves to building a socially just Americas. From Barrow, Alaska in the north to Tierra del Fuego in the south, the peoples of the Americas await the outcome of this 9th Summit of the Americas. Their needs are many, their hopes expectant. While our philosophies and approaches are divergent, our vision is the same: to build an Americas that works for all of us. But we are at a tipping point. The Americas and the world face existential threats. As leaders, we are called to make consequential choices which will irreversibly shape our collective futures. Excellencies, we will continue to postpone the urgent action needed to reduce emissions, finance adaptation and migration, and protect the most vulnerable countries and populations from the impact of climate change? We cannot. Will we implement practical and innovative measures to alleviate the crushing debt crisis? We must. Will we ensure that the socioeconomic devastation, including a sharp rise in poverty, hunger, and education loss caused by the pandemic, do not result in a lost decade for the Americas with more irregular migration and insecurity? We can. Will we allow ourselves to be divided by failed Cold War paradigms? Or will we meet the profound challenges united and with a common purpose? We will. These are the questions which underpin the theme of this 9th Summit of the Americas: building a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. How we respond to these questions will design our destiny. As we seek solutions, we know that money is not the problem. For example, in less than 3 months, 2 countries in this hemisphere committed over $55 billion to Ukraine. The question is, how much will be pledged to finance the ambitious agendas we agree at this summit? The future of the Western Hemisphere is a responsibility for all the countries of this hemisphere. Irrespective of our size, our GDP, our system of governance, we all have a shared interest in a sustainable, resilient, and equitable future. The power of the Summit of the Americas is the space it provides for all the countries of the Americas to dialogue and agree on joint actions. The summit belongs to all of the Americas. It is therefore inexcusable that all countries of the Americas are not here, and the power of the summit diminished by their absence. It is incomprehensible that we would isolate countries of the Americas which have provided strong leadership and contributed to the hemisphere on the critical issues of our times. Cuba has provided consistent, unmatched cooperation in health to almost 2/3 of the countries in this hemisphere, including Belize. The illegal blockade against Cuba is an affront to humanity. In fact, it is un-American. The time has come, Mr. President, to lift the blockade and to build bonds of friendship with the people of Cuba. Similarly, Venezuela has done so much towards energy security for the Caribbean region through its innovative financing programs. Venezuela's absence is unforgivable. Excellencies, at this most critical juncture, when the future of our hemisphere is at stake, we stand divided. And that is why the Summit of the Americas should have been inclusive. Geography, not politics, defines the Americas. The Belizean people, like people across Latin America and the Caribbean, are weathering successive and simultaneous crises. Caribbean economies are in a precarious place because of our inherent vulnerabilities to external shocks, including exposure to climate change and devastating storms. But the pandemic and now the effects because of the war in Ukraine have further battered our economies. Notwithstanding the 6% recovery in global growth in 2021, CARICOM member states, except for Guyana, recorded an average growth rate of 1%. A few member states experienced even further GDP losses ranging from -1% to -6.3%. Member states were expected to record a stronger growth performance in 2022, but the effects of the war, rising inflation, rising oil costs, and further supply chain disruptions have led the IMF to downgrade growth projections for the region. We cannot continue on this path. The recession was not of our making. We have come to Los Angeles to agree specific deliverables on climate change, debt relief, access to concessionary financing, energy, and food security. With firm commitments, we can move forward. Action must include equitable access to vaccines and treatment for COVID-19 to end the acute phase of the pandemic and a strengthened and sustainably financed global health architecture. Action must include the Paris 2030 delivery agenda. We demand firm plans from developed countries for emission reduction targets in line with the 1.5 degrees centigrade Paris temperature goal, a plan to scale up climate finance beyond the floor of the $100 billion annually through 2025, and doubling of adaptation finance. Action must include finalization and use of a multidimensional vulnerability index so that countries like ours can affordably finance our recovery and build resiliency. Action must include debt relief. Action must include a coordinated, multilateral response to the deepening food and energy crisis. Action must include finding peace in Ukraine. Today, Belize affirms the integral role of democratic governance. Let there be no doubt about our unshakable commitment thereto. The confluences of crises of our times requires all the countries of the hemisphere to work together in a spirit of solidarity and cooperation. As we work this 9th Summit of the Americas, let us call to mind the words of El Libertador Simón Bolívar. En la unidad de nuestras naciones descansa.
In the unity of our nations rests the glorious future of our peoples.
Nations rest the glorious future of our peoples. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes His Excellency Laurentino Cortizo Cohen, the President of the Republic of Panama.
Su Excelencia,
Excellency Joseph Biden, President of the United States of America, Excellence Almagro, General Secretary of the Organization of American States, Presidents, ladies and gentlemen, foreign secretaries, ladies and gentlemen, members of the delegations, ladies and gentlemen. I find it to be timely to be facing the topics for this Summit of the Americas because they are key factors for the development of our nations. And now the commitment is to make sure that we put into practice what we agree upon here in Los Angeles. The world is now living through the effects of the pandemic, the drama of the Ukraine war, with unforeseeable results and very concrete impacts in the rise of the price of fuels and food, whose consequences are aggravating the material conditions of the most vulnerable sectors of our region. So faced with this panorama, we have to refocus our attention, and this is the challenge, to interconnected problems that are common to our region in an effort to reach economic recovery supported in international cooperation, dialogue, and the very specific and effective actions that are directed to reduce poverty and inequalities in our region. Today, one of the biggest challenges before the Americas is the irregular migration crisis. Irregular migration crisis has its roots in the lack of opportunities for the population of the countries of origin of the migrants. Panama is constantly living this drama of the irregular migrants that come into our territory through the Darien region, risking their life, and in many cases, losing their life. It's a very dangerous journey through the wetlands and a inhospitable region. Let's ask ourselves, would you abandon your country? Would you leave your country if we had the life conditions that wouldn't force us to look for a better life elsewhere? I think the answer is very simple and straightforward. No, we wouldn't. The answer to this situation requires effective actions and very concrete actions as well. And I repeat, concrete actions in every single one of the countries with shared regional efforts. And this is where we should be concentrating today and after the summit as well. Ladies and gentlemen, in relation to climate change, our country is fulfilling its duties. It is working in a very formal manner, punctually and even before the deadlines for the commitments to preserve and safeguard life on the planet. Panama is one of the 3 countries in the world that has been declared with net zero carbon emissions. We were also able to protect 30% of our marine areas 9 years before the deadlines in order to reach the global objections. Mr. President and countries of the Americas, I would like to call upon you so that we can work together in a united fashion, so that there's greater cohesion in our region, so that we can go through this changing world reality, finding mechanisms, financial resources, and I would like to repeat, financial resources, so that we can face the great challenges that all of us are experiencing. I can also say with optimism that our region has the wealth that comes from its diversity. Each and every one of our countries has very unique strengths that can lead to a great joint effort in order to overcome today's challenges as well as future challenges. The road that will be undertaken and our shared success is what our people deserve. This is what they demand and they want from this summit. As far as Panama is concerned, we can contribute with our logistical capacities that include the best maritime connectivity, air and digital connectivities as well in the region. The Panama Canal and its 180 marine routes that serve 190 ports in 170 countries. The logistical center, regional logistical center for humanitarian assistance, and above all, the conviction by Panamanians is that peace and union of our countries is what matters. And I would like to underline this, the union between our peoples. We are here. We're here to serve. Panama, once again, is at your service to be a bridge in our region and to bring countries together. That is the historical vocation of Panama. Our resources and our strategic values are at the disposition of the countries in our continent. Leaders of the Americas, my hope is that this summit in Los Angeles will bring us closer, will take us to a greater unity so that we can go on to concrete steps and we come together to face our shared challenges with a single voice. Thank you.
The chair recognizes the Republic of Paraguay.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President of the United States of America, Joe Biden, Madam Vice President Kamala Harris, colleagues presidents, heads of state, ministers, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I celebrate the opportunity for us to meet at this summit. This is a vital space with a great importance for the strengthening of democracy. Albeit an imperfect democracy, it's the only acceptable way of government to provide progress for our countries. I am talking about creating a moral conscience on the supreme value of democracy, a conscience and awareness which, once it takes roots, is a shield, a solid shield and a long-lasting shield against its opposition. The main duty we have as those who govern our countries is to make sure that we conceive democracy in a constitutional manner as the undisputable way in which we live together. Paraguay has taken very firm steps toward its democratic consolidation. We have electoral competition, a separation of powers, and respect for individual liberties. We've been able to make sure that our elections are the only mechanism whereby we assign political power, making sure that there's an absolutely and undeniable respect for the popular will and the majority. I think that this forum is a very precious seat to share experiences and to reaffirm our Republican convictions when we are thinking about the threats that could endanger the existence of a democratic system. The pandemic, aside from threatening our way of life, made it apparent, like never before, the needs that our societies are going through, the fight, the struggle against inequality. We can say that this is still one of the greatest tasks that have been unfinished. COVID-19 left us with great lessons on how to face the most difficult challenges. Our states aligned their efforts in order to make sure that at the center we had the most vulnerable groups of people so that their situation didn't become even more serious in the context of social isolation. If the pandemic made sure that we looked at our priorities so that we could find new methodologies to face them, now, after this, we have to share and make sure that we go to the regional plane to put into practice those strategies and to make sure that we promote from multilateralism the aim of creating prosperity. I would like to quote Natalicio Gonzalez, who was one of our great thinkers. We have the moral imperative to make sure that the American states serve free men and women.
And in addition to the old challenges, the times we live in present current challenges such as organized crime, criminal organizations that stopped operating on the sidelines and they permeate politics and the market increasingly. Republican institutions are not safe, and we can see this due to the level of infiltration that we see in public administration, in the justice system, in political organizations, among many, many other areas. Given this situation, attacking the finances of criminal organizations, attacking their logistics, attacking their links to formal power is the most effective and best way to stop this progression. This criminal phenomenon leads to a backsliding in democracy and corrodes the culture of legality, and it can only be beat if we involve our citizens and make sure that the existence of this criminality is not normalized. A few weeks ago, our continent, our country, was in mourning due to the murder of Marcelo Pecci, Paraguayan prosecutor in Colombia, he was killed by criminals. This saddened all of us, but especially our law enforcement community. Organized crime is transnational, and the response to confront it also must be transnational. We need joint solutions to combat this scourge, as it knows no borders, and it has all of us as its common adversaries. Recently, cooperation between Paraguay and Colombia led to immediate operations that allowed us to identify the potential people responsible for the murder of the prosecutor. And I would like to once again thank the administration of President Duque for his commitment to justice. That is the path that Paraguay would like to follow, and this is widely shared by the countries who are in this space today. I would like to call upon you in this forum to defend the rule of law, to not stop and cede to organized crime, as organized crime wants to capture spaces that are only able to be occupied by representatives of political will. Ladies and gentlemen, the climate crisis is another great shared challenge that we must tackle together. Greenhouse gas emissions in Paraguay are low. However, we have suffered greatly, and we have suffered the effects over the last few years. This is seen in droughts, floods, fires, and crises when it comes to our water resources. Paraguay has no coast, and for us, the impact is even greater. The lowering of the level of our rivers has led to issues with international trade, as well as with generating energy, because our electrical system comes only from clean, renewable energies that is generated in hydroelectric plants. That is why our efforts must be geared towards mitigating the effects of climate change in our societies. We need specific commitments, especially from the countries who bear the most responsibility. I would like to finally thank President Biden for his hospitality of the United States as the host country in the beautiful city of Los Angeles, which is home to the largest Hispanic community in the country, and due to its cultural diversity, it reflects quite faithfully the characteristics of our region. With democracy in one hand, the rule of law in the other, we are excited to participate in this marvelous encounter with our brother and sister countries who are so beloved, and we recognize them as our allies so that we may come to a consensus, even though we have genuine differences, but we will have a resilient and equitable future that we all desire. I take my leave of you by quoting Pope Francis. During the pandemic, he reminded us that we are all in the same boat, and we must row together because no one can save him or herself alone. And this applies to every single challenge that we will share in the future. God bless you all, and thank you very much.
The chair recognizes His Excellency Alberto Fernandez, President of the Republic of Argentina.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. President of the United States, heads of state and of government, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by thanking the organizers of the 9th Summit of the Americas. I am sorry that all of us who should have been here are not present in this forum that is so conducive to debate. Today, I speak in my capacity as President pro tempore of ECLAC. We're the community of Latin American and Caribbean states. There we live together with diversity and respect for each other. We have different viewpoints. However, we share similar concerns during the current very complicated time. We are concerned that Latin America and the Caribbean have emerged from the pandemic as the region with the greatest amount of debt in the developing world. The average weight of external debt is over 77% of the gross regional product. We are concerned about the informal labor sector, which currently is over 50%. We are pained by this sort of lottery by birth, which means that people who are born in the humble towns of our region see a practically 15-year drop in their life expectancy as compared to those who are born in more affluent areas. Now, why are we undergoing such hardships if our countries have given us what we need to produce food and energy, more so than in many regions of the world? The answer is found in the global order. The central world has set financial rules that are evidently unequal. Few people have concentrated income, while millions of people are trapped and mired in poverty. From the sidelines where we are placed, Latin America and the Caribbean are pained to see the suffering of our brother and sister countries. Cuba is bearing an embargo that is over 6 decades old, imposed during the years of the Cold War, and Venezuela is bearing another, while a pandemic that is hitting humanity hard is taking with it millions of lives. With measures of this type, the idea is to put conditions on governments, but in fact, it only hurts people. We definitely would have wished for a different Summit of the Americas. The silence of those who are absent is calling to us. So that this does not happen again, I would like to say for the future that the fact the country is the host country of the summit does not have the ability to impose the right of admission on member countries of the continent. Dialogue and diversity is the best tool to promote democracy, modernization, and the fight against inequality. President Biden, I am sure that this is the time to open up in a fraternal fashion in order to pursue common interests. The years before you arrived, the years before your administration in the United States were marked by policies that were immensely damaging to our region that were deployed by the administration that came before you. It is time for these policies to change and for this damage to be repaired. The OAS has been used as a gendarme that facilitated a coup in Bolivia. They've appropriated the management of the IDB, which historically was in Latin American hands. The actions of rapprochement to Cuba were beaten down, and Pope Francis had mediated. There had been significant progress made during the administration of Barack Obama while you were vice president. The intervention of Donald Trump's administration before the IMF was decisive in order to facilitate unsustainable debt for an Argentinian government that was on the downswing. This was done with the only goal of impeding the electoral triumph of our political force. In this summit, we must analyze the present and look at tomorrow and look towards a creative reconstruction of multilateralism. We cannot impose a single thought in a world that requires harmony given existing dramas. Here I must point out the urgent need to rebuild institutions that were created specifically to integrate us, the OAS, if it wishes to be respected and if it wishes to once again be the regional policy platform that it was created to be, it must be restructured, and those who run it must immediately be removed. The Regional Development Bank must immediately return its governance to Latin America and the Caribbean. The IDB requires a capitalization process in order to have more and better means of financing in the America where we live. Exclusions to well-being, sustainable financing, and productive diversification, to technology for social progress and gender equality are not permissible. We must tackle the challenge of dealing with the deep-seated causes that put our living together democratically at risk. The world is being threatened by opportunists, by people who hate in countries that are discouraged and very hit by the pandemic. It is time to confront this. Latin America and the Caribbean know about the need of integration as a basic condition in order to achieve development. The Russian invasion of Ukraine fully impacts us. It is urgent that we create fora for negotiation to put an end to this catastrophe with no humiliation or desire to dominate, without dehumanized geopolitics or privileges of violence. The humanitarian tragedy that we currently see must not blind us. I am convinced that we face the opportunity to develop a true common strategic partnership. I propose two large objectives. We must organize at the continental level the production of food and protein, and we must develop our tremendous energy potential and our potential to produce critical minerals for the ecological transition. I come from a humanist country where human rights are of value, and they are at the heart of our identity, and we will always defend these in every area. It is specifically because of this that it is natural for us to think about building a sustainable future, one that is resilient and equal, as stated in the theme of this summit. I didn't come to Los Angeles to argue over when to do it. The time is today. Hunger attacks, and we must only debate how to do it. Given so much inequality, we must talk about the need to have progressive taxation policies, even when our domestic elites put these forth as a danger to equality democracy. The unexpected income that the war gave as a gift to huge corporations, food, weapons, and oil corporations must be taxed in order to improve the distribution of income. Why were we elected if it was not to put forth measures to benefit all of the population and not simply a few people? There is no theory of trickle-down of wealth that has worked. It is time for us to take note of this and act accordingly. Climate change also presents us with new challenges. The Caribbean is experiencing this dramatically, and there's no time to wait for answers. We are environmental creditors. We provide oxygen to the planet, and we are not responsible for the gas emissions that lead to the greenhouse effect. The environmental injustice that we are experiencing is destroying our continent, and we must confront an ecological transition with sufficient financing in order to mobilize innovation with social justice. Argentina is a peaceful country. We continue to call via diplomatic routes for the legitimate rights over the Malvinas. We continue to trust in dialogue. After the tragedy of the pandemic, we see wars as the triumph of human insensitivity. We must build together, united, renewed humanism, as Pope Francis teaches. This must begin with the last and reach every single person, either united or dominated. United by the common cause or dominated by economic selfishness, united by multilateralism or dominated by polarization, united by democracy with social inclusion or dominated by individualism and collective misery. President Biden, I am here trying to build bridges and tear down walls. As president of ECLAC, I would like to invite you to participate in our next plenary meeting. I dream that in an America that is united as brothers, that we commit to all human beings who live on our continent, that they all have the right to their daily bread, to land, to a roof over their heads, and to decent employment. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes His Excellency Antonio Gutierrez, Secretary General of the United Nations.
President Biden, distinguished heads of state and government, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. President Biden, thank you very much for your invitation to be here today in Los Angeles. Like the Americas itself, the city of Angeles both embodies and celebrates the rich gift of diversity. Today, it is more important than ever to bring the countries of the Americas closer together and help deliver the prosperous, democratic, and equitable societies that people expect. However, the challenges loom large. It is essential to close the gap between the great potential of this region and the daily struggles faced by the people who call it home. Across the region, we see countries that continue to be weighed down by a toxic brew of inequality, poverty, crime, insecurity, and mistrust. COVID-19 has hit this region hard, reversing hard-won development gains. Climate change threatens to erase entire communities, from small island developing states in the Caribbean to the fires that have leveled communities here in California. And the global consequences of Russia's invasion of Ukraine are rippling across a world already struggling with rising commodity prices, food insecurity, and high levels of poverty and inequality. Inflation is growing, debt is spiraling, and many countries lack the fiscal space and financial support to invest in recovery. And some middle-income countries in desperate need are considered ineligible for support from international financial institutions. This stems from an over-reliance on narrow measures of progress that count as production of richness the activities that are destroying our planet and ignore the vulnerabilities to external shocks. And I refer the gross domestic product or the gross domestic income that are far from translating the realities of our societies. In this context, people see violence and insecurity that are driving them to flee their homes and their countries. And they see increasing levels of gender violence, and more fundamentally, people risk to lose their faith in their governments and in their institutions. They see frequently crime and corruption going unpunished. They see a broken global financial system that benefits the wealthy and punishes the poor. They see lies, misinformation, and hate speech going viral sowing divisions, mistrust, and hatred. And they hear the voices of democracy drowned out by rising authoritarian and nationalist sentiments, giving false promises of security and prosperity. Excelências, esta cumbre ofrece la oportunidad de hacer frente a
This summit allows us to face these challenges. We will be able to look at the development of these new challenges to support people as we try to provide them health care, decent jobs, social welfare, and vaccinations for all. This implies investing in quality education for everyone. This implies reforming the world financial system so that all countries can access financing and debt relief in order to invest in recovery. This implies ending with our dependency on fossil fuels to make sure that we save biodiversity and financial support toward transition and the adaptation of developing countries. It also implies looking newly on migration, making sure that people are received and protected, and that they are afforded the security, the dignity that all of us deserve based on the World Pact on Migration. We require more cooperation between the countries of origin, transit countries, and destination countries, and as a center to our policies. We have to provide impartial justice systems, new efforts vis-à-vis crime and violence, democratic systems that protect human rights advocates and are there and reflect the voice of people, and a renewed multilateralism that will bring together all the world's nations so that we can face our common challenges. Dear friends, on every step that you take on this journey, you will have the firm support of the United Nations. We will work together in order to support people who are part of the hemispheric family. We have to be there to provide the potential and aspirations of the Americas. Thank you.
Thank you to our speakers for this first plenary. Now I would like to ask President Biden to share a few words to close us out for this session.
I'll be very brief. I want to thank you again for participating in the summit. I think we're off to a strong start. Heard a lot of important ideas raised, and notwithstanding some of the disagreements relating to participation on the substantive matters, what I heard was almost uniformity. Rational migration policy, doing something about the need to provide access to recovery and funding, a situation where we concluded that we must work on the environment and climate change, and so many other things. And there's no reason why the Western Hemisphere can't be the most forward-looking, most democratic, most open and peaceful, secure region in the world. We can lead the world, and with the potential that exists in our people and in our values. And so the way we achieve that vision, I think, is by working together. And that's what we're doing these last couple days. It's going to take a challenge that impacts on all of us, and to unlock the opportunities and the benefits that are available. But notwithstanding the disagreements, think back what we heard today. We heard almost total agreement on the substantive things that we should be doing. So let's get down to real specifics in the next couple of days as to what those substantive things are, how they're implemented, who implements them, how we agree on them, what differences we have on them. So we get down to, as a expression in English goes, to brass tacks. There's probably a better Spanish or other phrase for it than mine, but get down to really what's at stake so we can solve some serious problems. Thank you all, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. This concludes our first plenary, and we look forward to the conversation continuing tomorrow. Thank you.